Wales and the All Blacks this weekend, folks. Wales have a chance to get a first win over the AB since 1953, but they are massive underdogs. They are coming off a win, though, which is not something the All Blacks can say. They beat the Japanese last week with a last-minute penalty winner. The All Blacks are coming off a loss against England, which kind of put paid to our good run that we were on. We'd got a couple of wins over the Wallabies, and then, the Chicago result beat the Scots. All came crashing down against England. The Welsh have tinkered a wee bit. The All Blacks have made wholesale changes. I'm pleased to see Ruben Love. Goodness me, we've been waiting for this guy forever from an All Blacks point of view. And for the Welsh, Joe Hawkins returns to Welsh colours for the first time in a couple of years. And you've got a debutant in Harri Deaves on the open side. But we'll go through the squads, some of the stats, predictions. You guys can let us know your thoughts on how it is going to go. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We are less than 300 people away from 100,000. So subscribe. For Wales, let's start with them. They have made, as I said, a few kind of tinkering changes. Some of these are injury and suspension enforced. Obviously, Josh Adams got himself pretty stupidly red carded last week, so he's unavailable. He's suspended for a couple of games. But in the forwards, there is no Jack Morgan, obviously, because he got injured a couple of weeks ago, who's the biggest loss of all, the captain and by far your best player. But Harri Deaves on debut against the All Blacks, this is into the kind of deep end stuff for him, but he's a good player. I mean, they singled him out in the press conference, as they should, because he's a debutant player against the All Blacks. But, Steve Tandy, the coach, said good both sides of the ball, and I've looked at his stats, seen him playing in the URC, he's good. Gets good meterage, makes lots of tackles, busts a few tackles as well, so keen to see how he goes. Him being at 7 means Alex Mann moves back to number 6, and I thought Alex Mann was among the better of the Welsh performers last week as well. Made heaps of tackles, got hit a couple of times pretty high, which actually worked out pretty favourably for Wales, but fingers crossed for his head. He doesn't get any egregiously high hits on him this week. And then Aaron Wainwright is still there at number 8, although he is under a bit of an injury cloud, so may not. They're going to have to make a call closer to the game, so it may end up being Taine Plumtree starting at 8. We'll kind of have to wait and see. The front row is in the prop rotation continue with Rhys, Carre and Assiratti, who were bench players last week, get starts this week. Steve Tandy seems to like doing that with his props. And then Dewi continues on as captain at hooker. In the absence of Jack Morgan, he is always going to be captain. And then Jenkins and Beard continue on in the locking duo. Jenkins, like Alex Mann and like Ollie Cracknell, who's unfortunately out injured as well, were absolute tackle machines last week. They're going to need to do that and more against the All Blacks this week to stay in the game. Backline, Thomas Williams and Dan Edwards continue on at 9 and 10. That's pleasing. Thomas Williams, he's the only other Welsh guy to go on the Lions tour, set up 3 tries last week for Wales, so cracking guy to have along. Dan Edwards took one of those tries, some good footwork, and it's good for them to build a bit of chemistry with each other. And then Edwards gets a bit of a hand at 10 with Joe Hawkins being back at 12, because we haven't seen him Welsh colours for a couple of years. But Steve Tandy likewise talked to him about him as that kind of, another playmaking option. Can play 10, so it takes a little bit of the pressure off in terms of the creativity. So there's no Ben Tomos here. Max Llewellyn is still there at 13. And then the back 3, there's Tom Rogers coming in for the suspended Josh Adams on the left wing, Rees-Zammit on the right, and then Blair Murray at fullback. So the only change on the left wing, if I was the All Blacks, I'd be kicking high balls at Blair Murray because he ain't the biggest guy. Maybe if you're Wales, you shift the back 3 players around depending on the situation. Like Blair Murray, great footwork. I mean, New Zealand fans are very familiar with him. Bust tackles, runs the line, footwork, great. High balls, not so much. Rees-Zammit's played fullback before. Maybe shift them around as the game progresses, or just depending on who's got the ball and what kind of field position. If you're expecting high balls, it might be an idea to be putting Rees-Zammit or Tom Rogers in a more favourable position than Blair Murray, but we'll kind of have to wait and see how they manage it. Certainly some attack. Rees-Zammit had a couple of line breaks last week, really cracking. Also coughed up a bit of ball though, so certainly not a perfect performance. Coghlan is there as the replacement hooker this week with no Belcher. I think he's injured. Gareth Tomos is also back in, so a veteran to have back. And then Archie Griffin continues the prop rotation by dropping to the bench. Freddie Tomos and Taine Plumtree The other two guys for the forward replacements for Wales. So 5-3 split for them with Kieran, Harri, Jarrod Evans and Nick Tompkins. Remember, they got good impact from the bench last week because Tompkins scored the try and Jarrod Evans got the penalty that essentially won Wales the game. For the All Blacks, a whole bunch of changes. As I said, very pleased Ruben Love gets a game. The guy seems to have lots of talent, lots of potential, but you can only reach that potential by getting more games. He's been thus unused. It would have been almost better to send him to play with the All Blacks 15 to at least get him some game time and then bring him in for Wales if that's where you were going to play him. But, I mean, he'll be better for training with the big boys as well. But it would have just been nice to see him at least on the bench at some point. But he gets a start and he's at fullback. So good on him. Hope he has a good game. I also want to see more from our front rowers like Tamaiti Williams, Taukei'aho and Pasilo Tosi. Those guys who were on the bench last week were all brought forward to start. Some big units there. Both our props are massive guys. They need to put the Welsh pack under pressure because we've not really seen the All Blacks scrum able to turn the screws as much as we would have liked. Barrett and Holland are the second row. There's no changes there. Barrett's captain. Holland just got nominated for Breakthrough Player of the Year. I think well deserved because he's been cracking all season. Tackle machine, line out, big old unit. And then Simon Parker, Duplessis Karifi and Wallace Atiti. That's a change back because there's no Savia. There's no Nicky Smith as well. That big dummy that Savia likes to do sometimes. The only guy who's ever fallen for it at a test level, I think, is Nicky Smith. Neither of those guys are playing. But Duplessis, great at the breakdown. Satiti has been recapturing some of that form that saw him got breakthrough player last year, but usually from the bench. But he gets to start this week, and then Simon Parker is going to do that kind of hard graft that we have come to expect from him. Ratsima and Demak are going to have a bit of pressure on them. There's no Brodie, obviously. It was looking a bit worse for wear last week, to be fair, and it's a good chance for Demak to impress at 10. And Ratsima in the absence of Cam Roygaard, yeah, likewise. These guys could use a good game where they get some good front football and show us what they can do. And then also, like two guys at the other end of the kind of career scale, ALB and Rico Ioane in the midfield. Was this last chance saloon for these guys? Maybe. I mean, Rico's off to Leinster soon, so maybe they send him back a better player when his contract with them is done, but he hasn't had any game time in a long time, and ALB got some token minutes from the bench, so very experienced midfield combo, but guys that seem to be on the way out. And then Will Jordan and Caleb Clark are the wings, which I actually quite like, along with Ruben Love at fullback. That does mean Lester Fainganuku's on the bench, I guess, covering the midfield, because they've also got Sever Rees there. So one covers the outside backs and one covers the mid. I mean, Leicester could cover both. But yeah, they brought Sevu in. And then Finlay Christie's our replacement halfback with no Roygaard. Forwards-wise, Bell, Newell and Bauer are your prop replacements. Josh Lord, who was actually really good making tackles, winning lineouts. Last week, he drops to the bench. And then Leo Willie is actually going to get a crack for the first time in a wee while for the ABs as loose forward replacements. There's no Peter Lakai. He's injured. Mafaleo's injured. It might have been a good chance for him to get a debut, but no. Jacobson, Finau, Geordie Barrett, all these guys listed as unavailable. Stats. Wales showed some signs of positivity against the Japanese last week. They managed to bust some tackles, which is pleasing because it's not been a great area of strength for Wales in recent times. But again, like Argentina the week before, they couldn't get as much possession and territory as they would have liked. One would imagine the All Blacks will likewise have more ball than the Welsh do, so they will have to be doing more with less. And like even against the Japanese, they conceded more line breaks than they generated, which is concerning because the All Blacks have certainly got a better attack than the Japanese do. The All Blacks attacking stats, though, they had been tracking pretty nicely against the Aussies, against the Irish. The Irish game was a bit ugly, but there were at least some numbers tracking in the right direction. It all came crashing back down against England. Like our numbers in terms of like line breaks conceded and our own meterage on the go forward ball were about as bad as that Wellington game where we got hammered by the box. Not quite that bad, but similar ballpark. They will, in theory, find it a bit easier against this Welsh side, who, with all due respect, are ranked 12th in the world at the moment, compared to England, who were like what, 3rd last week, or 4th. They're in 3rd now. So two teams in very different positions at the moment. Recent history between the sides. It goes back to 2016 if you're looking back at the last 5 games, which is a stronger Welsh team than now. It's still an average score of 46-16. The last few results, 55-23, 54-16, 40-17. The All Blacks tend to win pretty comfortably against Wales. They are predicted to do so again this weekend. The All Blacks by 21, according to the algorithm, and 28, according to the bookmaker. So this is supposed to be a romp for the ABs, guys. Holly Davidson from Scotland is the ref. It's on at Cardiff. It's a 3:10 local afternoon kickoff, which is 4:10 in the morning for those of us in NZ. But yeah, this one is a chance for the ABs to test some depth. And for the Welsh, expectations are pretty low, man. I don't think anyone's expecting a win. A win for the Welsh would certainly make people forget about some of the tough results they've had to endure in recent times. But I think for Wales, you just need to see a good performance at the bare minimum. There needs to be some structure and some shape, and not let the All Blacks run riot, because the All Blacks have made a heap of changes. But yeah, for the All Blacks, is guys like Ruben Love, who finally gets a chance, needs to impress, and some of the veterans like Ioane and ALB and whatnot, likewise need to have good games. You guys let us know your thoughts. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Take care, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.